The night was unusually quiet for early November. Frost glazed the grass outside, and the woods behind the barn's house looked like a wall of black glass beneath the thin moonlight. I was just sitting on my bed, sketching, the usual. My brother Liam was across the hall, lost in some game on his laptop. The house was making those normal sounds, the kind that always follow when cold air slips through the window frames. But then, it started, a faint tapping. At first, I didn't even look up. I figured it was just branches hitting the side of the house. But the rhythm, it was too steady. 3 slow knocks, a pause, then 2 faster ones. I put my pencil down and just listened. That's when I noticed Liam's keyboard had gone silent. "Did you hear that?" he called out. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Probably just the wind." The tapping came again, but this time it was louder. It was coming from the back of the house, right near the sliding glass door that opened onto the yard. My stomach just clenched. I stepped into the hallway and met Liam halfway. He's older, and he was trying to act all calm, but I could see his eyes darting toward the stairs. "Let's check it," he said. "Could just be a branch." We moved together, every step making the floorboards whine beneath our feet. Downstairs smelled faintly of the apple pie our mom had baked earlier, which was a weirdly comforting smell for what was happening. Liam flipped on the kitchen light, and the room was flooded with this pale, buzzing yellow light. The second the light came on, the tapping stopped. I leaned toward the glass door, trying to see past my own reflection into the yard. It was just a wall of darkness pressing back at us. The porch light was off, so I could barely even make out the shape of the swing set. Liam, being the brave older brother, unlocked the deadbolt just enough to peek through the tiny gap. "No one's out there," he whispered. "Turn on the light," I urged him. He flicked the switch by the doorframe. The bulb outside hummed to life, and that's when we saw it. Something shifted right at the edge of the lightest shadow that moved way too smoothly to be a tree. Liam froze. A man was standing near the fence. His shoulders were hunched, and his head was tilted, almost like he was listening for something. His coat was hanging in shreds, and it looked like he was barefoot. In the frost, I whispered, "Is he drunk?" Just as I said it, the man lifted his hand and tapped the air, perfectly matching the rhythm we'd heard on the glass. 3 slow knocks, a pause, 2 quick ones, and then he smiled. Liam slammed the lock back into place so hard, it echoed, "We're calling Mom." But before he could even grab his phone, the porch light flickered and went dark. The kitchen light followed a second later, plunging the entire house into shadow. "The breaker?" I asked, but I think I already knew the answer wasn't that simple. Liam fumbled for the big flashlight we keep on the counter and clicked it on. The beam sliced across the room, landing right on the door. For a moment, everything was completely still. And then the tapping started again, even louder this time, but from a different side of the house. "He's moving around," I whispered, the words barely coming out. Liam tightened his grip on the flashlight and motioned for me to follow him toward the living room. "Stay close," he ordered. We crept along the hallway until we reached the large front window. Through the narrow space between the curtains, I saw movement again. This time, it was on our porch steps. A shape crouched low, pressing its hands flat against the wood, as if it was testing the sound. "He's trying to find a way in," I said, my voice shaking uncontrollably now. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from the back of the house. Liam ran toward the sound, and I was right on his heels. The sliding door was still locked, but one corner of the glass had splintered into a spiderweb of cracks. There were faint white marks traced across it, handprints, smudged with dirt. Liam immediately turned off the flashlight, and we just stood there in the dark, listening. The house fell completely silent again, except for the sound of my own frantic breathing. I wanted to scream, but some instinct in my gut told me to stay absolutely quiet. Then we heard it, a faint scraping sound, rising from beneath the floorboards. It wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from under the house. A slow, dragging noise. "Like fingernails on wood," Liam whispered. "The crawl space. Our dad always said raccoons got under there sometimes. But this didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard." The dragging stopped right below the heating vent, near my feet. I stumbled back, my heel bumping hard against the wall, and then, from the vent, came a whisper. A man's voice, hoarse and broken. "Emma, let me in." My blood turned to ice. Liam didn't hesitate. He yanked my arm and pulled me upstairs. We locked ourselves in my room and shoved my heavy wooden dresser against the door. Below us, the tapping started again, moving from wall to wall. The man was whispering both of our names now, his voice soft and patient, as if he had all the time in the world. When the police finally arrived an hour later, they found the back door wide open and the porch light bulb unscrewed from its socket. They said there were no footprints in the frost. The only thing they found were the small, precise marks of fingers along the window glass, pressed so deep they'd left dents. I never stayed alone in that house again after that night. We moved not long after, but sometimes, on really cold evenings, I swear I can still hear it outside my new bedroom window. That same awful rhythm. 3 slow taps, a pause, and then 2 quick ones. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have a creepy story of your own, share it in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more chills. Stay safe out there. Jason Clark had never liked the woods. Not really. He grew up near them, yes, but that didn't mean he trusted them. When the trees pressed close together and the wind stopped moving, the forest had a way of listening. It was Tyler's idea to spend the weekend hunting deep inside Black Hollow, a stretch of wilderness that didn't even show up properly on GPS. The place had a reputation for swallowing radio signals and occasionally people. They arrived late, on Friday afternoon. The sun had already begun its descent, turning the treetops into a web of rust and gold. The cabin looked older than either of them expected, its roof sagging in the middle and the windows clouded from years of neglect. Jason tried to laugh it off. "Looks like something out of a ghost story," he said, throwing his bag onto the porch. Tyler grinned. "Exactly why it's perfect. No one around for miles." Inside, the air smelled like damp wood and cold ashes. There were 2 small rooms, a stone fireplace, and a single oil lantern hanging by the window. Jason noticed the floorboards creaked in different tones, depending on where you stepped. The walls were thin enough to hear the wind slide along their surface. They set up their sleeping bags near the fire and cooked canned beans over the small camping stove. By nightfall, mist began to crawl through the gaps in the walls. Around midnight, Jason woke to a sound scratching, not the light skitter of mice, but something heavier, deliberate. It started beneath the cabin, dragging along the beams like metal claws, scraping wood. "Tyler," he whispered. Tyler didn't answer at first, then rolled over, half asleep. "It's probably a raccoon." But raccoons didn't make slow, rhythmic scratches that lasted minutes at a time. Jason sat up, the lantern flickering beside him. Outside, the forest was silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Then came a faint knock against the wall, right beside his head. 3 taps. A pause. 2 taps. His stomach dropped. It was the same pattern from the story he'd read online last week, the one about Lakeview House. The same strange rhythm that never seemed random. He shook Tyler awake. "Someone's outside." Tyler groaned and sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You're imagining it. Listen." The tapping came again, but from the opposite side of the cabin now, like whoever or whatever it was had circled them. Tyler grabbed the lantern and went to the window. The light illuminated the first few trees and nothing beyond. "See no one there." "Then what's making that noise?" Jason whispered, as if in answer. Something brushed against the window, smearing a dark line across the fogged glass. The lantern flame shuddered. They both jumped back. "It's probably an animal," Tyler said, though his voice trembled. They waited until morning, neither sleeping, both gripping their hunting rifles. When sunlight finally bled through the cracks, the forest looked almost peaceful again. But when Jason stepped outside, he froze. Circling the cabin were hundreds of small handprints pressed into the mud, too small to be adult hands, too perfect to be animal tracks. They surrounded the cabin entirely, as though a crowd had gathered around them in the night. Tyler laughed nervously. "Must be a prank. Kids, maybe." "Kids don't hike 10 miles into the woods," Jason muttered. He walked toward the tree line. following the prints. They led to an old stump, then vanished. Next to it lay something strange, an old leather notebook wrapped in twine, soaked from the dew. Inside were half-faded sketches of a cabin, maps of the hollow, and a note that read, "We heard them under the floor again." He showed it to Tyler, who frowned. Maybe your uncle came up here before, left his journal. But Jason's uncle had never mentioned any of this. And at the bottom of the final page, barely legible under the smudged ink, were 2 words, "Don't answer." That night, they sealed the windows with boards they found in the shed and kept the rifles close. By midnight, the scratching returned, louder this time. The cabin shook with every drag along the walls. Jason held his breath, listening. Tyler whispered, "They're under us." A sudden thud came from the trapdoor leading to the crawl space. The latch jumped once, twice, like something was trying to push it open. Tyler moved toward it, whispering, "We have to lock it tighter." Before Jason could stop him, the trapdoor lifted an inch, and something pale reached through our hand. Small, thin fingers, dirt-streaked and trembling. Tyler dropped the lantern. It shattered, plunging the room into darkness. In that instant, Jason heard dozens of tiny breaths, whispers rising from the floorboards, as if a crowd of unseen children were murmuring right beneath them. They bolted outside, sprinting through the trees until the cabin was out of sight. When they finally reached a road at dawn, they collapsed beside Jason's truck. Neither spoke on the drive home. Weeks later, when rangers went to check Black Hollow, they found the cabin empty. The boards were torn from the windows, and the floor had caved in around the crawl space. In the dirt below, dozens of small handprints were pressed into the wood, each one perfectly preserved, as if waiting for someone to return. Lena Martin was 19 and hated her job. The Driftwood Inn sat just off Highway 39, a cracked neon sign buzzing half the letters out of existence. It was the kind of place people stayed for one night, sometimes just 1 hour, and never came back. The wallpaper peeled in slow curls. The air always smelled like bleach and cigarettes, and the rooms held more secrets than guests ever confessed. She worked the night shift cleaning rooms, the worst hours when the world outside went quiet and every sound inside felt too close. It was her 2nd month there when she was assigned to room 217, a room no one liked taking. The older housekeeper, Janice, had warned her once, voice low, like a secret. "If you hear the TV come on by itself, don't go in. Just mark it clean and walk away." Lena had laughed then, but the way Janice's eyes stayed fixed on the floor made the laugh die halfway. That night, she pushed her cart down the dim hallway, humming to fill the silence. The hallway lights flickered every few seconds, casting her shadow forward and pulling it back again. She hated how the carpet always seemed damp beneath her shoes. Room 217 was at the far end, past the vending machine that never worked. The "Do Not Disturb" sign still hung on the door. But the manager had told her the guests checked out that morning. She knocked once, just in case. No answer. The door opened easily with her key. The air inside was colder than the hall. She flicked on the light. Nothing. The switch clicked uselessly. She sighed, pulled her phone from her pocket, and used its flashlight to scan the room. The bed was unmade, the curtains drawn tight, and the TV screen reflected her light back at her like a sheet of glass. She started cleaning, trying not to think about the smell. It wasn't rot, but it wasn't clean either. Something in between. When she reached the mirror above the dresser, she froze. Behind her reflection stood a figure in the corner of the room. She turned around. Empty. Her hand trembled as she aimed the flashlight into the corner, just a coat rack. She exhaled, laughed softly to herself. "Get it together, Lena." She turned back to the mirror. This time, the figure was closer, right behind her shoulder. She dropped the flashlight. The room plunged into darkness except for the faint red glow of the motel sign outside, filtering through the curtain. Her breath came short, uneven. She crouched, feeling for her phone. A voice whispered behind her, "You dropped something." Her skin went cold. She stood slowly, phone clutched to her chest, and forced herself to look into the darkness. The shape in the corner had moved. It wasn't the coat rack anymore. "Who's there?" she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. No answer. The TV flicked on by itself, static roaring through the silence. The screen flashed white, then settled into a flickering image of a woman sitting on the same bed. Her head tilted, eyes wide open, but lifeless. Lena couldn't look away. The woman's lips began to move on the screen, mouthing words that made no sound. Lena took a step closer, the static filling her ears like ocean waves. Then the woman turned her head directly toward Lena. Every instinct screamed to run, but her legs locked. The woman on the screen whispered something, and though there was no sound, Lena understood the words. "Come meet us." That the TV shut off. Total darkness. A second later, the door creaked open. Pale hallway light spilled in. At the threshold stood a man, tall, thin, hair wet, like he'd just come in from the rain. He smiled softly. "You must be Lena," he said. "My wife wanted to meet you." The name hit her like a knife. The manager had told her the man in 217 was traveling with his wife. Both checked out that morning. Lena backed away. "You're not supposed to be here." He stepped forward, eyes gleaming. "Neither is she." A whisper filled the room, again this time behind Lena. She turned and saw the woman from the TV standing by the window, her hair hanging like a curtain over her face. The man's smile widened. "See, she likes you." The door slammed shut. The lights flickered back on for half a second, just long enough for Lena to see them clearly. The woman's skin was gray, stretched tight. The man's face had collapsed inward, eyes hollow, lips blackened. Their hands reached toward her. Lena screamed and ran for the door, but when she grabbed the knob, it burned hot. The world tilted. She kicked, hit the wood again and again, until it gave way. She tumbled into the hallway, gasping. When she looked back, the room was empty, clean, the bed made, TV off. She didn't wait. She ran straight out the front door, barefoot, into the freezing night. Later, when police arrived, they found room 217 spotless except for the mirror. Written in the fog across its surface were 5 words: "We just wanted to talk." Lena quit the driftwood in that night. But sometimes, when she passes that stretch of highway, she still sees the flicker of the red neon sign in her rearview mirror, and a shape standing in the window of room 217, waiting for her to look back.